one thing I would want you guys to know, we told everyone in our group that this is a safe place, nothing leaves here, and so we ask the same thing of our story, that it doesn't leave here. We're more than willing to talk about it. If you have questions or you see us at church, feel free, don't hesitate. We're not afraid to talk about our story. There's reasons our families don't know our story, so just be aware of that. And some of you don't know it, but some of you know some of our friends that don't know. So just be aware if you don't mind.
An honor.
Yeah. So my name is Levi. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, about 45 minutes north of where Tim grew up. And I grew up in the quintessential all-American family. My parents are still married to this day. I had a brother who's 12 years older than me, where there was no fighting, there was no arguments, there was really no difficult conversations at all. Really conversations, period. Good or bad. My family didn't talk about anything. And so I grew up playing sports. I was the golden child, never had any issues, never got in trouble. We were at church 3 days a week. My dad was a deacon, still is a deacon at our home church. I was kind of a leader in the youth group because I was always there. And so when I say my family didn't do conflict, I mentioned my brother's 12 years older than me. So he's technically my half-brother. But no one talked about that in my family. So much so is the first person to say anything to me about that was when I was a sophomore in college. My parents have been married for 37 years. I'm 36, so I could tell math doesn't line up there, right? He's 12 years older than I am. Something's not right, but no one ever talked about it. And when he was telling me this, I was like, wow, that's crazy. You're the first person to ever say anything to me about us being half-brothers. He goes, yeah, that's weird. He goes, because today was the first time someone said anything to me about it. And he's 12 years older than I am. So he would have been 33-ish at the time. To add that a little bit more in depth of how my family avoided conflict was my mom didn't tell her parents that she was pregnant with my brother until she went into labor and she lived with them. I don't know how she hid it. There's no way she hid it, but she didn't say anything until they went to their grave, never asking her who the father was. That's how little conflict there was in my home growing up.
I grew up the very opposite. So I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a very low income, poverty, like bottom in schools, you name it. My family did not go to church, and somewhere along the lines decided I would start going to a private Christian school in middle school. So those were really pivotal years. And I came home and I had failed Bible. And my mom was literally like, how the bleep and bleep do you fail Bible? I was like, well, I don't think anyone's ever read one in our family, so I think that might have something to do with it. And we laugh about that now, and there's like a full circle that I ended up going to Bible college, but I mean, my family was just chaos at a very early childhood. I was actually adopted when I was 3 by my aunt and uncle. My mom, she was a single mom. She was 18, very, very young, and she honestly just didn't really know how to be a mom, and she really tried her best, but it just was not panning out for the best interest of my upbringing. And I was like 3 years old asking, where am I going to sleep tonight? And so it was the Lord's intervention that I would be adopted by my aunt and uncle, and that I would have such strong parents, because I really thrived in an atmosphere where there was consistency. And so I'll leave it at that. But I ended up hearing about Jesus because a friend of my mom's who worked with her ended up sharing the gospel, because someone would just say like, well, if you're not saved, you're going to hell. And my mom's friend was like, okay, but let me tell you who Jesus really is. And so we just got to see this family live out the gospel. And that began shifting a lot of things in my mom, a lot of things for me to open up and get into like a private Christian school. And so that's where I actually ended up hearing about Jesus for the first time and received salvation in middle school.
So, again, my family didn't do conflict. We avoided everything. We swept everything under the rug, and ultimately just hid things. Because if you don't see it, then everything is good. Everything's golden. Everything will go on as it needs to. So we swept everything under the rug. When I was in my sophomore year of high school, the summer of my sophomore year of high school, I had a friend come over and he introduced me to pornography. So he showed me a website, showed me how to delete history, and that was that. My parents weren't tech savvy, and so I could hide pornography. That was the way I coped with things growing up and into college. And so when I went to college, I thought I had a relationship with the Lord. I grew up in church, like I said, but when I went to college, I certainly fell far away from the Lord. I partied a lot, did what a lot of college kids do, and would wake up on the weekends like, where's my phone, keys, wallet, bank account? And I knew at the time that wasn't the way I needed to be living, because I still knew deep down that like this wasn't right. This isn't what I was looking for. But I didn't have that firm foundation. I could tell you all the things you wanted to know about Jesus. I could tell you all the Bible stories. I could answer all the questions. But I didn't. I knew Jesus up here, but I didn't know Jesus here. And so when I went to college, I guess I fell off a cliff. And ultimately, I heard the Lord basically open and close every other door. He opened a job opportunity for me to move to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was the only job I had. And so I took it, I moved out there after I graduated college, and I knew that that was the Lord. Because I knew deep down I needed to get away from Oklahoma. I needed to get away from my friends. And so I moved out there and I knew no one. When I moved out there, I didn't know what Albuquerque looked like. I didn't know it was a desert. I didn't know it was gonna be brown. And so that was different from growing up in northeast Oklahoma. And so I thought it was dirty. I was like, where am I? This isn't for me. And I was doing a landscaping job in the desert. But I ended up going to church. I looked up a church. I literally Googled a church of my denomination. And the first one I went to, I was like, that one looks nice. So I went there, and that's ultimately where Amanda and I met, at our young adults group there. But I would go to church, and I would sit right behind the sound booth, because no one wants to sit right behind the sound booth. That way I had an easy in and out. I didn't have to talk to people. I could come in and I could leave. Until one day, an older lady came up to me and was like, hey, I feel like I'm supposed to share Jeremiah 29. Not Jeremiah 29:11, but the entire chapter of Jeremiah 29. And I'm instantly like, please don't read it. And so she's like, that's it. I was like, thank you. See you later. And so I did at least go and read Jeremiah 29. And long story short, it's about the Israelites being in the desert and multiplying, taking the land for theirs. And so I'm like, wow, Lord, I'm in a desert. Okay, I get it. And so it was very profound, and then we later come to find out that we haven't confirmed, she won't confirm it, but we're 99% sure that it was actually one of Amanda's mentors that shared that with me, and we're incredibly close with them to this day. And so I ended up starting to going to church there, and that's where Amanda and I met.
So I mentioned that my family did not attend church. My grandparents were Catholic in name, and my other grandparents were really the hands and feet of seeing somebody live out what you would consider a Christian. They were Episcopalian, and my birth mom was married to their son for about a year before she was just unable to stay married and be a mom. And they just have kept me in their life for the last 30-something years. So I'm so grateful for them because, you know, when you're placed for adoption at a young age, even though it's a very selfless thing for a mom to do that, it's very turbulent in terms of understanding, where's my home life? What am I doing? It really takes some time to adjust, and I had some rejection issues, and I didn't really understand identity. My mom and dad weren't exactly giving me what would be God's identity. My mom worked a ton, which was a blessing so that I could do certain things, but my dad was not emotionally present. I mean, he was a very strong, he's very strong personality, but he's just not someone who really knew how to care for the heart of a young girl, and I cried a lot when he would get mad, and it was just, you know, it's journeying through those years of adolescence. And so, all that to say, I learned to perform. I learned to do really well in school. I learned to go out for, you know, different sports, and as long as I was doing well in my sports, my dad would come to those events. He would show up at my track meets, but if we were losing, he was hightailing it out of there, and that was really crushing, that he would just leave in the middle of, like, we're losing and dad's leaving. So that just created, I think, this, without knowing it, some kind of unaddressed wounds. And so all that to say, after high school, my parents ended up getting divorced. I ended up getting married. I was 18 years old, and I had moved to Kansas. My family did farming and ranching, and there was a military base. Don't do this. Don't marry someone who's going in the military, and you don't really know each other. Just don't do that, okay? I did, and so my ex-husband was a sniper for the military, and our marriage was very short. It was toxic, it was violent. I was in a counselor's office, and they were like, do you know you're in an abusive relationship? And I was like, no, most of my life has looked like this. What is this? And so, you know, it's realizing what's healthy and what's not healthy. So I got a divorce, a very long journey of just trying to cope and fill a hole and a wound from a very young childhood that was really never placed with the love of God or with an understanding of belonging or family and identity. So I was searching for it in all the wrong places. And so I finally came to the end of myself, and I gave my life fully to the Lord after a car accident in 2010. I rolled my car, and my Bible had fallen out of the back seat. It was in a box. I hadn't been reading it. And I sat down on the floor in my grandparents' kitchen, and I was weeping because these two scriptures were just like the Lord was breathing over me. And one of them was Lamentations 3:22. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And then the second one was, I will see him with my own eyes. I am not another. And I think it was the first time I just realized how personal God was and how in pursuit he had been for me in my heart all those years.
So, like I said, Amanda and I met in Albuquerque at our church in our young adults group. The first night I saw Amanda, I was like, hey, how are you? I didn't actually say that, but that's what I thought. And I was like, she's cute, I like her, don't know her. And it was cool how the Lord put us in connection. I lived with 4 other guys, and Amanda lived with we all went to church together. We were all the same age, and really hung out. And so Amanda and I knew each other and were friends before we started dating. And when I say friends, Amanda liked my roommate and told me to put a good word in for her. And I said, okay. And I did not. I also didn't say anything bad about her. And so there is hope. You can get out of the friends. You can. So Amanda and I actually, we did start dating. Obviously, we're married. And it was cool that we got to start our marriage off as friends. And really, Amanda got to see my heart. She can speak to that. But we got married in 2014, and then a year later, we moved here to DFW. We moved here. I got a job opportunity here, and Amanda was gonna finish up her schooling here at the King's University. And so when we moved here, everything was going well. The job I was here for was working out, and then all of a sudden, one day without any notice, I basically got fired from my job. And so in the process of that and kind of trying to navigate what's next, I felt like a failure. And so I continued going back to my coping mechanism of pornography. And so I hadn't said anything. Amanda had asked me multiple times, non-confrontationally, just a question. And I was so scared of confrontation, of being honest and letting Amanda see who I was. I just flat out lied. I said, no, that's I don't struggle with that. Just flat out told her that, and moved on and acted like nothing ever happened. And so, even at this point, it wasn't something that I was sharing. I was keeping Amanda at arm's distance. It's like, you can come close, not too close. And this goes back to how I was raised. We don't talk about conflict. Conflict is bad. That's what I thought. Little did I know, conflict is an opportunity for connection, if you haven't heard that yet. And so, for me, I just kept in this spiral of pornography, coping, pushing Amanda away, putting up walls, not being open, not being honest. And so, okay.
Okay, so it was 3 years later that I met Levi after I had been married and then divorced. So I was not really looking for another relationship. I was looking to get healed and really to know the Lord. And so when we met, our first meeting was he had on a red OU shirt and red hair. And I grew up in New Mexico. Everyone has brown hair, brown eyes. I'm like, no, red is not working for me. And so the Lord had to do a work in my heart, okay? But I'm so thankful I had mentors like Terry who also had red hair and said, you know what? It's not about what someone's wearing or what they look like. And honestly, I got to see who Levi's heart was and that I felt safe. Because that is how you can establish a relationship. So, that's for free. A year after moving to Texas, something did begin to shift. It felt like the favor in our life was starting to lift. And I didn't know at the time, I was full-time at the King's University, but Levi had been using pornography. And it was coping with that unexpected job loss. And for men, like that's huge. You're a provider, and I think it was really potential on his identity. And so I had at that time been facing my own health challenges. I had found out I had endometriosis, I was doing a procedure, there was just some things happening that was a challenge for our physical intimacy. And so it began a journey of watching the Lord bring healing in ways that we had been praying for, but not how I thought it would come. And so I had spent hours with the Lord in the secret place, just wanting to see Levi thriving, and leading and loving me the way that a husband is intended to and designed to really step into, but I could just see he was really wrestling with what was going on with his job loss and had a lot of shame. And so I had gone to Oxford, England. I love Europe. And I did my very first Esther fast. And this was at the same time Levi was starting a new job.
Yeah, so I started a new job. I was still hiding, really just in a spiral. Even though I had a new job, I was doing well at that new job, but my relationship with the Lord was fractured, at best, fractured. I was disconnected from the Lord, I was disconnected from Amanda, I was living my own life in reality, just hiding from everything. And so in late 2018, I began having an emotional affair that quickly turned into a physical affair. And I didn't tell Amanda. Again, I hid everything. And throughout this, Amanda would ask, she's like, what's going on? What's happening? What's going on? And I would just continue to lie. Nothing. I would push her away. I'd push her away. Ultimately just longing for connection. And so, like I said, I didn't say anything, but Amanda heard from the Lord, and she went through the phone I had and saw messages and confronted me, and I just very coldly looked at her and said, "It is what you think it is." I didn't know it at the time, but that was the Lord. That was the Lord exposing the truth that I had been trying to hide. I'd been pushing her away so much, trying to hide. Covering up my sin. Covering up everything that I had gone through in my life. For the sake of my thought process of I'm protecting Amanda. But in reality, I was being selfish. I was hiding, I was taking my feelings, pushing them down, suffocating them. I wish I would have been able to hear the last two messages before Amanda and I met. If you're hiding something, tell someone. If you're not comfortable telling the person you're next to, I'll say don't get married. I'm not saying don't get married ever, don't get married right now. The person next to you is stronger than you think they are. I didn't need to protect Amanda. That's not my job. That's the Lord's job. Amanda's way stronger than I will ever be. I say this every time, but I hope I've experienced unconditional love. And this may sound weird, but I hope none of you ever have to experience that on earth. Amanda had every right to walk away. But she chose love. She chose covenant. She chose connection.
So I know that's like a bomb just got dropped. It was pretty significant, the gravity of that season. When Levi came to me and had shared his struggle with pornography, I was able to understand how he could have crossed lines from an emotional affair to then starting to get physical. And so I was completely like, you have the wind knocked out of you, that's an expression, but that's how I physically felt. And I just remember the Lord crashing in. My world had felt like it was crashing in, but the Lord was so near, and I can't tell you that I would ever want to walk through that again. But I know that if I hadn't walked through that, I wouldn't have experienced his presence the way that I did in that season. I would be at work and a colleague would just invite me to come and close the door and she'd pray with me and I was bawling. I went and stayed for a few nights with a friend who had really been kind of paving the way for marriage in crisis. And so she and her husband were very trusted, and they sat us down immediately and was like, get it all out. Anything that's not been out, it has to come out. And she's like, you've been praying for your marriage to not just be okay, but to be thriving. And this is unfortunately part of what has to happen to get there. You gotta go through this. And I didn't want to go through that. I didn't want to go through it at all. I had to choose in my heart, like Levi said, covenant and not contract. Because in the flesh, it would have been really easy to be like, well, he's out. If that's what you're doing, I'm going to go do whatever. I mean, that's real. Your flesh is like, if that's what you did, tit for tat, I'm going to do this. But that wasn't what happened. We went through a very intensive 18 to 24 months of being discipled in how to both heal, and our marriage was not the priority. Healthy Amanda, healthy Levi was the priority. And from that, we could learn to connect and we could learn to keep moving forward. And so in 2018, we found Upperroom, thank God. And it's like a friend prayed. He breathes new life into us. And some of you are probably like, what? I mean, I was mad. I said some really ugly things. And I had to check my heart, because if I asked a question, I had to know, am I prepared to hear what he's going to tell me? It took a lot of time to rebuild the trust, but the Lord walked us through that and to the other side. And it helped me realize that I was not losing it when the Lord would give me these promptings. And so I stand upon Psalm 121. It says, I look up to the mountains and the hills, longing for God's help. But then I realized that our true help and protection is only from the Lord, our Creator, who made the heavens and the earth. He will guard and guide me, never letting me stumble or fall. God is my keeper, and he will not ever forget nor ignore me. I had felt really ignored in our marriage. There was no emotional capacity that Levi had because he just didn't know. But what that 18 to 24 month intensive restoration looked like was he learned empathy, and we both learned to active listen, which is key. So what's beautiful is we agreed to both humble ourselves and ask for help. I needed help, Levi needed help, but we needed a covering. And so what was amazing was they didn't dishonor, they didn't treat him any differently, they didn't shame him. I'd never seen anything like that. It was truly like, if you've ever read A Culture of Honor, that's what they did. And it was what we needed. And it says in 1 Peter 4:8, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. And so, yeah, he gets the glory, because it really made no sense that we could walk through that time, that I would experience the nearness of the Lord when it felt like our world was in shambles.
So I ultimately had to take ownership of my actions. I had to make drastic changes. The next day after Amanda found out, I quit my job, walked away, no plan, no source of income, but luckily, by the grace of God, I quit my job because I was having an affair at work. So that's why I quit my job. It's cut, severed, walk away. No questions asked, that was priority. And so the couple that helped us in our journey and set us down, they actually hired me. And that's who Amanda was talking about when said there was no shame. I wasn't treated differently. I wasn't looked down upon. I was met with grace by outside and obviously inside. And so the things I had to learn were ownership for my actions. I had made big changes, accountability, take responsibility for my actions, not Amanda's actions, because I did everything. No matter what Amanda said, it didn't matter because I made those decisions, and so I had to take responsibility for them. And so there's a lot of healing, like Amanda said. We both worked on ourselves, and in turn worked on our marriage. But that was the lowest point of my life by far. And it wasn't until that point, I told you I started looking at pornography in high school, and it wasn't until the next day that I told Amanda about an addiction to pornography. So I hid that throughout this entire time. And it was from that day, when I confessed a sin, it was from that point forward that hasn't been a struggle. I haven't looked at pornography since then, since before that day. And so the power of our tongue, the power of confessing, it's so pivotal. It's so pivotal. And if it's not the person next to you, come talk to someone. Get it out. Tim will talk to you. I will talk to you. Johan, Eric, if you're male. Female, don't come talk to me. Sorry. Bless you. Go find Amanda, Dawn, Grace, Sarah, not me. Sorry. And it took a lot of hard work, but it was a journey. And so, going back to Jeremiah 29 and verse 13, it says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart." And I think that was the turning point in my life when I truly sought the Lord with everything. I let go of everything else. I let go of my pride. I let go of fear, and quickly realized that I can't be dependent upon myself. I can only be dependent upon the Lord. And so one thing I want to leave everyone with is humility. If you can't be humble with the person next to you, with yourself, it's going to drive a wedge. Humility is key, because if I can go low, it welcomes Amanda. It gives Amanda an opportunity to come in and to meet me in that place, and vice versa.
When I went to Oxford, there was a scripture the Lord had highlighted that I didn't know. It's one of those things you tuck in your back pocket for a rainy day, and I needed it at this time, and it's from 1 Peter 5:10, and it says, "And after you've suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you." And we stand here as a testimony that he rebuilt our marriage, and that he's faithful to establish where there's been trust broken. And he really can do what seems impossible. And so we walk as sons and daughters who are in covenant, and we choose intimacy. It was hard for Levi to let anyone see who he was, but when that finally happened, it allowed there to be a true connection, and seeing one another's hearts. He delights in filling us when we're weak. He really draws near to the lowly. And, when we're walking in pride, and Levi was pretty prideful that night, that I'm like, is this really happening? But the Lord still was able to come, and I think really get to the root of what was going on. And so, I think the last thing I'll share is we were really steadfast in that time to take communion. It did a lot of healing in my emotions. And we would practice remembering and sitting at the table that the Lord had provided in the presence of our enemies. And I watched him bring healing to my physical body, to our emotions, all of the anger and resentment I had. I was really angry. And now I have joy, I have peace, and I can say with confidence that I'm not rejected, but I'm chosen. And we get to see the fruit and the reward of walking with true surrender. And And that's the sweetest thing. I thank God we call it D-Day, because he brought freedom. And in the Sunset's phrase, free indeed. And we share our story because we don't want anyone to walk out of this room not experiencing freedom. You get to choose to bring something into the light, or the Lord will bring it into the light. I would recommend choosing. It's way better. And so we want you all to know that you can be filled with hope. No matter what it has looked like, he can redeem, and he has a plan. Instead of shame and dishonor, you will enjoy a double share of honor. You will possess a double portion of prosperity in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. Isaiah 61:7.
Yeah, the last thing I have is you're not alone. You're not alone in this journey. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but even if the person next to you is not the person you end up getting married to, you're not alone. You're not alone. And Amanda asked me, like 2 days after she found out, she's like, what do you want out of this? And I told her, I said, I want to be a guy that I didn't know I had. I didn't think I had someone that I could go to. I didn't think I could come to any man in my life and confess anything, or talk about anything, or say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or even, hey, this is really cool and I enjoy this. Like, I didn't feel like I had that. And so Amanda asked, who do you want to be? And I said, I want to be that guy for someone else. So you're not alone. There's other people in this room that are seeking the same things you're seeking, or struggle with the same things you struggle with. So just be aware you're not alone.
The end. We do have some exciting news. It's the Lord's really, really sweet miracle story, but we are expecting, which is huge news. We do believe that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and our testimony, and we pray that our children will not ever have to experience the things that we've had to get free from. So there's that.